Hi everybody, this is Piotr. Some of you have asked me to do a tour of my system and what I use and why I use it, so I decided to make it. I'm gonna separate this video into two parts. In one I'll explain my system, and in the other one I'll do a run through of how everything is routed for my convenience when I record something. But so we'll just go from top to all the way to that case over there and that one. So let's get started. So with this first one over here is the quad morphing VCO, which is a 4-voice oscillator, which you can morph waves between them via the CV X and Y, so for all 4 of them. It's really good. I use it for primarily for pads and for longer chords. It just depends on the project. Here we have the Discrete OTA VCFs, 2 of them. It's probably my favorite low-pass filter. I don't know, it sounds really good. And I use it in most of my patches when I'm splitting signals from some other modules that are monophonic. So here we have the cloud generator, E340 from Synths again. This is more of like an oscillator that I use primarily for bass or for melodies, because you have the spread and chaos right here. So when you modulate those, they create a really cool like more wavetable style leads, which is pretty interesting. The E950, which is it's kind of like a vocoder, but it also works pretty well on melodies as well. So if you modulate some parameters or like go to talk 1 or talk 2, there's just interesting stuff there. The wasp filter, which is one of my first filters that I got, and it sounds really good. I use it primarily also when I split signals from like for these two. I use these two, which is also the 12 dB SAM, and yeah, it sounds really nice. I have no complaints here. It's a very nice analog tone. So the Morphing Terrarium with the MTX expansion from Manhattan Analog. I primarily use this for like growly or like weird bass. Sometimes subs as well, because it goes really low. Yeah, you can morph X, Y, and Z parameters, and then go Z out or the X, Y out, and it's a very rich sounding oscillator, and I use it practically all the time. So here we have the Deckard's Voice by Black Corporation, and this is probably the closest you can get to a really nice thin brass sound. It's inspired by the Yamaha CS80, and the Black Corporation also have a Deckard's Dream, which is like an 8-voice polyphonic synth. This is a monophonic version, like an entire voice, and it sounds really good. I made a video on it if you want to check it out. It's gonna be on the top link there. This one, the Moog Subharmonicon, it's amazing for subharmonics and polyrhythms, but yeah, I primarily use it as my very long chords that don't necessarily have to be in time. So I usually have the tempo knob all the way down, and it's usually it's being sent clock from another module that's also very slow. So it's perfect for like ambient music, and you know, the bass on the cutoff right here when you have the filter on, it just sounds incredible. So I use it all the time. Because it's monophonic, I usually split the VCA out into 2 voices and have it go through like 2 different effects, so that it just has a little differentiation, I guess. So the quad ADSR, this is my main ADSR. It's really cool because if you send one gate signal to it, it is routed in a way that makes it so that all of them are the one. Or if you send individual gates to each of the 4 channels, you get 4 different outputs. So it's either 1 multiplied by 4 or 4, and there's 4 different. So that's really nice. Then we have the Schweiman VCO2RM. This is probably my favorite sounding bass sub or like more tenor style leads, or for like chords or drones and stuff. It's really nice. And of course the ring modulation capabilities, it's really nice. So one of the multiples that I have, I split all of my signals all the time, so they're very useful around the system. Here we go to my drum section, you could say. We have the Pico drums, which is I think 64 samples, and you can trigger 2 separately, but you only have 1 output, so you have to kind of figure out which works best together. Then we have the BD808 and then SD808, which is the kick and snare. Both sound really nice, very thick tones. Here we have the noise and random voltage from Doepfer. I primarily use this for like sample and hold, or I use it in the background of pads that I have. So if you run this through a high pass filter and put reverb on it, it just creates like this background behind pads or something. It's really nice. Here we have OH and CH, a hi-hat, closed hat and open hat. I use this probably all the time when I do drums. Then we have the Pamela's New Workout, which is an 8-channel sequencer with a plug division. I use this primarily for drums, but I also like to use it for triggering other things when I'm slaving this with other master clock. And then I can send clock output with already divided subdivisions, which is really nice. Then we have the 2HP ADSR, which I primarily use for when I have a lead that's separate from like a chord where I would otherwise use the quad ADSR. And then 2 multiples again, so that's 4 different possibilities of multiplying. Sample and hold, yeah, I sometimes use this for like different loops here and there for melodies, usually with things that aren't very melodic, so just as like a background thing. The Moog DFAM, which I know it's supposed to be made for like percussion or kick or snare and stuff like that, but I don't really use it as that. I really like the built-in sequencer. And with the capability of modulating all of these things, I usually do other things around it, so it sounds much different from like what people usually use it for. I recently made a video that I used this as like one of the elements with the subharmonicon as well, and it sounds completely not the way it's supposed to sound, but I mean, it's modular, so there's no rules, right? The VCA mixer section, this VCA is like essentially where all of the signals from this rack are going to, and it's pre-routed into one of the mixers here, or the mix-ups for more gain staging, which then goes into the stereo mixer from Synths for like final gain staging before it goes into it's routed here into my 1U case, which from there it goes out into the patch bay, but it's a different video. And I have this output over here that I used prior to this one. I'm thinking of probably getting rid of it because I don't use it much anymore. And then we go to this case over here. By the way, this one is more like analog. Some of them are more digitally controlled analog ones, but this is more like, I don't know, just the way I have it organized. And this case is a Pittsburgh EP-420 for 120 HP. And then this one is the Pittsburgh EP-344 with the bridge in the middle. So this case is more of my digital analog modules. So let's dive in here. The first one is plates. I use this all the time in any patch that I ever made. It's a very versatile oscillator, and my secret weapon is modulating the model. So it jumps around between different functions and stuff, so it sounds very weird and wacky, and that's the way I like it. So here we have marbles, which is a random sampler, but I practically use it for modulation for any of the Mutable Instruments things. So primarily use the Y output on it, which I split like 8 times, and I modulate the timbre and morph of plates, and then morph Y and morph Z and morph X of the morphing terrarium, and it has a very weird wacky like tone to it, and I really like it. Rings, this is more, I use this for like calm, like string style instruments for melodies, and it's really nice. But you can also input a signal here from a different oscillator and output it from even or odd harmonics, and then you have like what a resonator does, which is pretty cool. Beats, which is the latest Mutable Instruments module that they made, and I think it's one of their last ones. And I like it, but this is essentially like Clouds 2.0, so that's what they were going for. But I must say it's a little bit different. I still use Clouds way more often than Beats. It just has like this weird in granular mode. Clouds, I think, beats to the ground. So we have warps here, which is it's like a meta modulator. You can either use the internal oscillator and kind of morph between waves, or you can send two different signals from two different oscillators and then kind of mix and match to see which one works better. Then you can modulate the algorithm and timbre to kind of make it wacky, which is cool. Here we have the Mutable Instruments elements, which is very complex rings with more functionality. Is also stereo, and there's much more possibility for exploration of different like mallet style sounds, and I primarily use this for like leads, or actually like very like resonance sounding backgrounds. Pretty interesting as well, like pads. Ripples is a filter, but it doesn't sound like a filter. It's more like it like glues things very well together. So it sounds like a compressor in a way. Like it just makes everything sound nice when it comes through it. So I use it all the time. Then we have links, which is it's like a buffered multiple with more function. So if it's kind of a really cool utility module when you need to route things somewhere, and yeah, it's small, so it fits in most systems. Veils is another quad VCA that is essentially responsible for signals coming from this case. And then the VCA from Tip Top, which is I primarily use that VCA for anything that requires like leads and stuff, because you have more a function of offset and more CV modulation is cool. The Doepfer sequential switch. This is for more self-generative patches. Yeah, it just really depends on when I use it. You feed it sequence and pitch, and then it outputs randomly sequences. It's pretty cool. And you have the 2HP ARP, which is perfect for making arpeggios. I use this sometimes for in conjunction with the instruo over here, so I have everything is in pitch. And instruo is a quantizer, so it essentially sounds like a very nice clean arpeggio. It's usually in the background, usually with some delay, so it's not in front of the picture, but it's kind of like floating around in stereo field. Here we have the bridge from Pittsburgh. It's essentially very useful for like utility stuff, like if a preamp, mix and multiple, and a bunch of other like busing things, which is pretty nice. Then we have MAFs, which is it's 20 HP and it takes up some space, but it does so many things, from LFO to oscillator to a 4-channel mixer to like an ADR. Really nice for like sketching things or making stuff more complex. The Echophone, it's like a pitch shifting delay. I primarily use it for FX routes when I'm splitting stuff into like into more complex things. For example, I would go subharmonicon into the multiple. From there it goes, one channel goes into the Echophone, the other one goes into Clouds. And then from Clouds and from the Echophone they go into one black hole, which is on channel 8 it's a diffusion reverb, and then from there it goes stereo into like a VCA, which I don't know, it adds like a differentiation to it sometimes, and I really like it. So the LFO, I mean, I use it for modulation as well. Bloom is my main sequencer. It's a 64-step sequencer, but it has a capability of paths, branches, and mutations. So if you modulate it in a certain way, you have more steps in a way, but they get generated randomly, so you don't know what's coming. You have qubit chance over here, which is it's a very complex LFO essentially. I mean, you can use it for drums, for generating random sequences theoretically, and then yeah, I usually use this slaved when I send clock to it, and then I send this to modulate clouds or like any parameters in any of my FX processors. Here we have the qubit tone, which is like a 4-channel low-pass and bandpass filter with capability of modulation. It's really nice. I primarily use this exact one when I have 4 outputs from here, and it's an easy way for me to monitor all of them going into here, which is quite nice. And we have nebulae, which is like a sampler and like a granulator. So it's stereo in, stereo out, and it sounds, I mean, you can load samples in there and like play around with the controls and then send it to like a reverb, and it's a nice background. This is my second black hole DSP for more capability of like reverb inside of the system. This is a mono Mutable, which is like a Eurorack interface between some of the monome stuff that I have, like the monome arc or the monome grid, which is hidden right now. It's essentially like a nice sequencer or anything else really that you would want to do with it. You have to program it in Max. So here we have the Forbidden Planet, which is low pass, high pass, and band pass filters with modulation capabilities. I use this all the time. This is actually my first filter that I ever got, so it's kind of sentimental, but yeah, it still finds its way through my patches. Then we have the Tip-Top Miso, which is a mix, invert, scale, and offset module. I primarily use this for when I have a signal and I want to invert it or mix it in a specific way. I don't know, it's cool. Then we have the Intellijel Micro MIDI, which I primarily use this when I do like modular renditions of songs. I send MIDI through the MIDI cable there, and then I receive pitch, velocity, gate, and trigger into other modules. So if I split it, I can send that to multiple modules and then back into the interface for recording. And then the last one here is the Expert Sleepers Disting Mark IV, which is 80 different functions, but only one at a time. I primarily use this for delays or like stereo reverbs as well, so it's very useful around my system. And then this case over here is Intellijel 7U104HP. I use this for traveling or when I bring it to school, because I can't take all the big heavy ones. So it's very useful to have like the utility €1 up top for things that don't really necessarily need a lot of like modulation capabilities. You can fit all the oscillators and filter in the previous two over there, which is very neat. This one in the back has a zeroscope, which is an oscilloscope. Then it has noise tools over there, which is like clock, sample and hold, and like trigger stuff. Digitank, which is a reverb. This one, which is a buffered multiple, and then 2 dual VCAs, which are cool, but the only thing I kind of don't like them is that you have to have a trigger in order for them to work. And then you have the headphone, 1U for monitoring, and then 1U where right now I use it for sending stuff with the output into the input of my audio interface. So that's really about it. In the next video I'll be explaining how everything is routed, and yeah, so hopefully that kind of made it helpful. And if you have any questions, comment them below and like the video, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next probably ambient explorations. Cheers.